Hi everyone, it's Tarrant.
And Stella from Meeple University.
Today we'll be teaching you how to play Spectre the Board game, published by Modiphius Entertainment.
Let's get to the game.
In Spectre, players are Bond villains within the secret organisation of Spectre. While they all may have a common enemy in James Bond, these villains are out for themselves, battling against each other to place their agents out into the world, complete schemes and secret plans in order to rise up through the ranks of Spectre and take the final position as number one. Whoever can best position themselves within Spectre and avoid the meddling influence of 007 will be best placed to finish as number one. To set up, each player chooses a Bond villain and a colour. In that colour, take your Spectre track marker, 20 agent cubes, and 2 pawns, your villain who has a circular base and your henchman who has a square base. Take scheme tokens showing this cross and place one onto each of the schemes on your player board like so. These abilities are not yet available. You'll have to unlock them through the game before you can use them. A scheme box like this, with 2 actions but only 1 set of costs, is a single box and would take a single token. The special abilities that your character starts with are shown at the top of the board, and if there are any setup instructions there, resolve those now. Players now roll dice to determine the starting turn order. Whoever rolls highest becomes number 1 and takes the number 1 placard. Continue through with numbers 2, 3 and 4 until you reach your player count. Place all players' Spectre track markers on the start space of the Spectre track, with number 1 on top and the highest number on the bottom. Shuffle the secret plan cards and then deal 1 to each player. Create the mission deck by shuffling and dealing 6 missions face down, and placing the On Her Majesty's Secret Service mission on top. You'll resolve 1 mission per round, and so this will count the rounds in the game. The rest of the missions can be returned to the box. The dice, majority tokens and 007 are placed near the board ready for use. You're now ready to play. Spectre plays in 7 rounds, and each round plays in the turn sequence shown here. First, the current number 1 draws a mission card and then reads it out to all players. This is a semi-shared objective which is in place for this round. And there'll be a positive effect for players who contribute to it, a larger positive effect for the player who contributes the most, and a shared negative effect if the mission fails. Secondly, in number order, players will place their villain pawns onto an action space which accommodates a villain, and resolve the action. These can be action spaces on the main board or on the player boards. Then, and again in number order, players will place their henchman onto an action space which accommodates a henchman and resolve that action. Through these actions, players will be placing agents onto the 7 regions of the board, and the next step is to check majorities of agents in each of those regions, giving the majority token to the player who holds it, as well as the bonus. Next comes resolving the mission. Based on what's already on the board, plus a blind bid of resources by players, you'll determine whether or not the mission fails and then distribute rewards or penalties. Next, you'll roll the dice and 007 will come to visit, with a usually negative effect for 1 or more of the players. Players then retrieve their pieces from the board. A new number order is set based on current positions on the Spectre track, and you'll proceed to the next round. The distribution of the number placards is important since each of them has a unique ability printed on it which resolves either during or between stages of each round. Stronger powers for the trailing players also allow some catch-up through the game. The aim of the game is to be the furthest progressed around the Spectre track at the end of 7 rounds and endgame scoring. So now let's have a look at the phases of each round in detail. The first step of each round is for number 1 to draw and read the round's mission. There's several useful pieces of information here. There's an objective, which are things that you can do during the worker placement phase to earn points towards the mission. There is a bid, which shows you the types of resources you can bid during the mission step to gain points towards the mission. And it will show you the consequence that all players will suffer if the players collectively fail the mission. Depending on the game state, you may want this mission to either pass or fail, and so all of this is useful going into the next steps. Before proceeding, you'll now resolve the round effects for number 2 and number 4 if in the game. Number 2, with full knowledge of the mission card, chooses any one resource to gain, while number 4 advances one step on the Spectre track. Next is villain actions. In number order, starting from number 1, players will place their villain pawns onto a villain action space and resolve the effect. There are 7 possible villain action spaces on the main board, 2 starting action spaces on your villain board, and you may possibly be able to unlock more action spaces as you uncover the schemes on your villain board. The circle action icon or the combined circle square can both be occupied by a villain, and only a single pawn can occupy an action space at any given time. Once you've placed, resolve the action immediately. When resolving a villain action on the main board, resolve the effect in the slightly yellowed box, not the effect in the black box. In Region 2, place one of your agents in Region 2 and gain 2 blueprints. In Region 3, place an agent in Region 3 and then another agent in one of Regions 3, 7 or 8. In Region 4, place an agent in Region 4 and then pay any one resource to advance one step on the Spectre track. In Region 5, place an agent and gain 2 gold. In Region 6, place an agent and then another agent in one of 2, 3 or 4. In Region 7, place an agent and then another agent in Regions 4, 6 or 7. And in Region 8, place an agent and gain 2 intel. Each villain board has an action called Finalize, and taking this allows you to unlock one of the schemes on your board. Spend the cost of the scheme and then remove the scheme blocking token, adding it to your collection of resources because you may have cause to spend it later. If your schemes are joined by arrows, then you can't unlock one to the right until you've unlocked the one to its left. Schemes come in 3 types. An action space, which you'll be able to use from your next worker placement onwards. A once-off immediate effect, represented by the lightning bolt. Or a permanent passive ability, which is represented by no icon. Each villain board's top starting action, as well as any unlocked by schemes, is unique to that villain. Once all villain actions are complete, you'll move on to the henchman actions, which work in the same way. Starting from number 1 and going in number order, players will place their henchman meeple onto either a square or a joint square circle space which is empty, and resolve the action. Once all players have taken their henchman action, you'll now move on to checking each of the regions for majorities, and you'll resolve these from left to right. When doing this, pawns are ignored. You're counting up the number of agents which each player has in the region. The single player who has placed the most agents gains the majority token for that region and resolves the region bonus, printed here. If a region is tied, then no player is considered to have majority, nobody takes the token and nobody gets the bonus. If a player were holding the majority token from a previous round, and then there were a tie, that token would be returned to the supply. The player who wins Zone 2 gets to move one of their agents from any one zone to any other zone. Since Region 2 is resolved first, this can be a good way to use this agent to win another majority. Majorities in Regions 3, 4, 6 and 7 all grant extra resources. Majority in 5 grants a point on the Spectre track, and majority in 8 lets the player move 3 agents. Again, these can be from anywhere to anywhere else, but because this is the last region resolved, any majority this grants won't be in effect until next round. Players keep any majority tokens they won with their other resources, and like the scheme tokens, these can be spent in some specific circumstances. Now it's time to resolve the mission. There are 3 different types of missions in the game, and first I'm going to take you through this type, which shows one of the regions in this objective box and one or more resources in the bid box. The objective and the bid boxes offer 2 different ways for players to gain mission points. The team needs a certain number of mission points to avoid failing the mission, and the player who gains the most mission points gains a reward. The first thing you do is check the objective. In this case, it's agents in Region 5. If there are no agents there at all, then the mission automatically fails without a bid. Resolve the negative effect and move to the next phase. If there are agents in that region, then each agent is worth 1 mission point to the player who owns it. Now players bid. All players simultaneously and secretly hold a number of the bid resource type in a closed fist, and this can include 0. Once all players are ready, the bid is revealed. Each resource counts for 1 mission point, so now count up the collective number of mission points between objective and bid. In this case, it's 4 plus 9 is 13. Regardless of the mission, it will pass if you reach 6 mission points in a 2-player game, 8 mission points in a 3-player game, or 10 mission points in a 4-player game. If it fails to reach that threshold, the mission fails and the negative effect is resolved. If the mission succeeds, then rewards are given out. Any player who contributed to the bid draws 1 new secret plan. So in this case, these 3 players would get secret plans. Now determine the player or players with the most mission points. Here red has 5 and green has 5, while yellow has 3. So red and green win on mission points. In reverse number order, the players now gain their rewards, which are 1 point on the Spectre track and the opportunity to complete 1 secret plan from your hand. Reveal the card, spend the resources shown or meet the conditions on the card, and then continue moving up the Spectre track a number of points based on the top left icon on the card. Then discard it. Some of these are just spending basic resources. Some of them involve spending the scheme and majority tokens, while there are some others which are quite situational. Resolving as many secret plans as you can is critical to winning the game, because these have by far the most points that you can get on the Spectre track. Completing one as reward for winning a mission is the only way to score these and gain the points during the game, but you do get the opportunity to complete any of your leftover secret plans at the end of the game, still gaining their points in full. The benefits of resolving this during the game as part of a mission reward is that some of these requirements are temporary or situational, and you don't have to set yourself up to have met all of these objectives at the same time at the end of the game if you're finishing these plans progressively. Gaining points progressively can also help you move up in the number order between rounds, if that's what you're looking for. Once all rewards are distributed, the current round's number 3 gets to retrieve 2 of the resources they bid as their round reward. All other bid resources are paid to the supply, regardless of whether the mission failed or succeeded. Those are the steps for an Agents in a Region mission, and note that the first mission of the game, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, works the same way but counts agents everywhere on the board. There are 2 other mission types. A bid-only mission is based entirely on the bidding of resources. There is no objective and no auto-fail condition before you do the bid. The other is a villain pawn mission, indicated by this icon here. One player may spend their villain pawn for the round onto this mission card, and this will be worth 3 mission points towards the mission. If no one does this, the mission automatically fails, otherwise you'll proceed to the bid as normal. Now it's time for 007 to interfere with your evil plans. The current number 1 rolls the 2 007 dice. As their current round bonus, number 1 may re-roll one of these dice once. Now resolve the effect. If you roll 2 numbers, then add them up, and 007 visits that region. Remove all agents from that region, and as long as 007 remains there, no player may place a pawn or agent there. If you roll 2 bond symbols, then remove 1 agent from each player from each region on the board. If Bond was on the board from a previous round, remove him to the side. If you roll a bond symbol and a player's number, then the player currently of that number gets to choose which of the players Bond visits. Players may not choose themselves. If there's no 4th player, the choice for Bond 4 goes to number 1. And if there's no 3rd player, the choice for Bond 3 goes to number 2. Bond now gets to work, disrupting the chosen player's evil schemes. The chooser flips one of the chosen scheme tokens over to the +2 side, making it any 2 resources more expensive to unlock. The chosen player then captures Bond, and like a typical villain, sets to work explaining their evil scheme prematurely to Bond. The chosen player chooses one of their secret plan cards in hand and reveals it face up for all players to see. This is still considered in hand and can be resolved as normal. However, it's now worth the lower number of Spectre point tracks on the right hand side instead of the higher number. The chosen player then sends Bond on his way, sending him to any region of the chosen player's choice and resolving it as if you had rolled that region on a double number roll. Once again, when the dice are rolled, you cannot choose to have Bond visit yourself, meaning that when your number is rolled, you have to give somebody else that option to place Bond and disrupt one of the regions. Once Bond is finished, players retrieve their pawns from the board, ready for the next round. Finally, review the Spectre track, and from furthest ahead to furthest behind, rearrange the name plaques. This will change the hierarchy and benefits for the next round. A couple of other notes on the Spectre track. When you advance, if you land on a space where there is already another player, you place your marker on top of the stack that's there. The topmost marker in a stack is considered to be ahead, so at this point the order would be blue, green, yellow, red. When moving forward, any time you land on or move past one of these red Spectre spaces, you gain a bonus action, choosing it from among any of the unlocked actions on your villain board. Finally, if you're on one of these red spaces and are instructed to move backwards on the Spectre track, you do not move backwards. These count as somewhat of a safe haven, but they also mean you won't get to resolve this bonus action a second time. At the end of the turn in which the last mission was resolved, the game ends. And you'll go through the full turn sequence, including removing pawns and including exchanging nameplates. The game could also end immediately if the Emilio Largo player completes the Drop the Bomb scheme. In number order, players may now attempt to resolve as many remaining secret plans as they can, again gaining the lower points if Bond has revealed it, or the higher points if not. You do not gain Spectre track bonus actions when doing this. Once all of this is done, exchange name plaques one more time, and the final number 1 is the winner. And that's how to play Spectre the board game. We hope you enjoyed this video. And do check out the project page for this game. We'll put a link to that in the description below.
If you find this video useful, please help us by hitting the like button. Subscribe to us. You can also hit the meeple in the corner to do that, and hit the bell icon so you'll know when we have new videos. You can also follow me on Instagram for my board games journey.
Comments, suggestions and feedback are all welcome in the comments section below.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.